You should have a piece of chalk, right? Just regular blackboard chalk. This is a graphite stick. It's basically the same graphite that's in your pencil, only it's in a chunk, you know, rather than encased in wood. And you'll also have then a single edge razor blade. What you're going to do first, and then you have tissue. And this, I'm going to kind of ball up, kind of tuck it inside, because I don't want to do it with all the wrinkles and everything on it, right? So I'm kind of folding it up inside so that the top is relatively smooth. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the chalk, and I'm not whittling it. Like, I'm not shaving it like this, right, where chunks would come off. I'm holding the razor blade straight down on it. So the razor blade is perpendicular to the top of the chalk. And I'm just scraping it along. And you can't really see how much I'm putting down because it's kind of white on white. But I put that down, kind of nice, smooth, and I rub it into the paper fairly hard. Change that to a clean spot. And there's extra tissue, if you need it, back by the pencil sharpener in the back. So I'm going to kind of, you can just shake it off onto the floor, but I'm kind of brushing it off the excess. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the graphite stick. I'm going to hold it straight and just shave it. What I've done with the chalk is it seals the tooth of the paper. If I just put graphite down right onto the paper, it'll stain it. Like when I go to erase up, it's not going to come up very white, right? The chalk kind of helps protect the paper a little bit so that it'll erase up whiter. The other thing the chalk does is that the graphite will slide around on it much easier than it would just on the paper. It kind of rides on top of it. You can't use it with, you can't do this with charcoal because charcoal has some, you know, kind of the same consistency as the chalk, and it just kind of mixes together and gives you gray. This I'm going to rub very lightly, like I'm not pressing at all. I just want to do a whole series of kind of random working it around. But you want it to just lay on top. And a lot of times when you're seeing streaks like this, it's not so much that you need to rub harder. Sometimes that's just an indication, because the tooth of the paper will only hold so much tone. So that's usually an indication that you have a little bit too much graphite. So you just change to a cleaner spot on the tissue, go back and kind of pull that up. You don't want a lot of excess graphite floating around on it. So if you see streaks that just keep moving around, that means you still have more to take up. If you leave too much graphite down, what will happen is when you start erasing, when you start pulling up tone, you're going to load your erasers up right away. Like you'll constantly be trying to clean the graphite off of them. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm not picking up as much. My streaks are pretty much gone. It's fairly even. It doesn't have to be perfectly even because you're going to be going in and adding tone or erasing through most of this anyway. And you want it to be kind of a medium gray. Okay. So then I'm going to start, and I'm like I'm not going to erase on this till I have everything mapped out and the darks in place. So I have a 5B here, so it's fairly soft. And I'm going to do the one that's kind of pointing at me there. I've got to wear different glasses. So I'm going to start with the one that's coming right out at me, because that's fairly simple. It's almost a circle, so it's the easiest one to deal with. And even though they have flats on them and all that, I'm going to start it just as a circle. I might go with a softer pencil. Because you can't. I've got to do it darker, and I don't want to press hard. That's why I'm using a soft pencil. It's going to irritate me. Is because I want to be able to make my marks and see them, but not press in the paper too much. And then the part of that pear where it gets smaller is not right in the center, since I'm off to the side, but it's closer to this edge. It comes up over halfway, and it's kind of large. So that spot where it kind of gets smaller is like this. And then the very tip of that actually twists off to the side. It kind of does this, where got an ellipse, right? Can you guys see that? So you're still basing it on what you're looking at in terms of size relationships and what they're doing. You're not just randomly putting circles down. And then cast shadow, it sits inside of that. The other pear, if I kind of line up the bottom, the bottom of it's about here. The top's just a little bit lower. And this one, since it's kind of facing sideways at me, it just touches this visually. It's got a really narrow kind of ellipse, but the tip that comes out, I'm going to approach it just like kind of we talked about with the profile, and then I'm approaching it with straight lines. Because I'm not really seeing it come out towards me, and then the other one actually is going to run off my paper. So I used the first one I drew to help me draw the other two. Right? If you make a line you don't like, right? Don't erase it. You don't want to pull up the chalk until the very end. So if I say I want to change this, just go back and kind of rub it into the background. You're not going to lose it completely, but it'll lighten it enough that it's not so, noticeable. And you're going to go in and erase stuff anyway. Then the next thing I'm going to do, staying with the 6B, I'll start pulling some of the flats into this. This side actually comes and kind of swings in like that. And I'm going to start pulling up the shadows. You don't have to be too precise with the rendering on these as you were with the eggs. I want them to go approximately where they are, and I'm only going to do the one that's facing me. I'm not going to sit here and do all of them. So I'm going to pull in the shadows where they're coming in. Relatively quickly. I'm not pushing real hard, right? A lot of this is just graphite I'm putting down, then I'm going to move around to other places. So once I've kind of got the first layer down, I take the tissue, stretch over my finger just like a kneaded eraser so it's nice and smooth, and just go in and kind of start softening that. Like this will go this part of it goes relatively quickly. You don't want to spend a lot of time trying to be very exacting with like edges and the shadows right now with it. Because when you start rubbing it and doing all that with it, you're going to smear it and kind of, you can't control that exactly anyway. All the precision will come more at the end. So I build up to kind of soften it a little bit. I'm going to use the same spot. So get my tones build up. And this, like once I have charcoal kind of build up on my finger, or graphite rather, I can actually go back and take and move some of that into some of the other areas a little bit. Like you can kind of finger paint with it a ton. Okay, so having done that,